Welcome. It's now 6 o'clock and I'm handing over to Dr. Zianda. Dr. Zianda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Renee. Good evening, colleagues, and welcome to yet another summer webinar. I cannot believe we are only a few days away from December. And I think all of us know that December is a very exciting time, not only for us, but for our patients as well. It's usually a time when we are in full festive mode and all we can think about is eating all this delicious food. But I think this evening, before we can even think about food, we need to think about fitness, particularly during this time. So in partnership with Discovery Vitality, this evening we have a very exciting guest who is going to be talking to us about cardiorespiratory fitness. Our speaker is Mara Leach. She is a registered biokineticist with over 2 decades experience in private practice. And she has worked with professional athletes to the general population. Mari is currently the business lead for Discovery Vitality's physical activity portfolio. And her role in Vitality includes new product development, maintaining scientific rigor of Vitality's physical activity portfolio, and developing initiatives that increase fitness engagement among not only the Vitality members, but the broader South African population. Mari firmly believes that exercise is a magic pill that can impact the mental and physical well-being of individuals. So she's really excited to fulfill her purpose by translating this powerful message through various formats and platforms to ensure others to improve their quality of life. So then today she is going to be giving us findings from the Discovery Vitality Cardiorespiratory Fitness White Paper. I'm really, really excited to hear what you have to say, Marie, and I know that our members will not only glean information for themselves, but also for their patients. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zianda. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time, I'm sure after a long day, to come and listen to this talk. I hope you'll find it valuable, and the insights that I'm going to share is going to expand your view on what your current thinking is around cardiorespiratory fitness. And also, I think for many of us, pushing the wrong buttons here. For many of us, if you think about cardiorespiratory fitness, it was, a view that you had in mind with regards to you only thought about it when it's professional athletes, and why should anyone else care about it? But I think today it's really a metric everyone should know and care about. I just want to quickly change the settings on this deck. Can you see the presenter view?
Yes, we can, Marie. Thank you.
I just want to see why. Is it doing this funny thing again as we had earlier? Sorry about that. I did not touch anything.
Not a problem. Technology is wonderful.
Got it. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Go ahead.
This is the third webinar today, so I'm telling you. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with what is the main problem that we're sitting with. If you're looking at the latest report that was shared from the World Health Organization that we released in July this year, they're reporting that 1 in 3 adults, which is about 1.8 billion adults, is not meeting the global recommended levels of physical activity. Now, in the previous report, this was 1 in 4 adults, so it is actually getting worse. And when they say not meeting the physical activity guidelines, it means that people are not doing a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or the 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise, or it could be a combination of both. So in South Africa, that ratio looks even worse. It's like 1 in 2 people that's not meeting these guidelines. So we are truly sitting in the middle of a physical inactivity pandemic. So why is physical activity so important? It's been reported that physical inactivity is responsible for 9% of premature deaths worldwide. And if we look at vitality data, we can see that as members increase their physical activity days, there's also a corresponding reduction in mortality risk. So maybe just to explain what a physical activity day is in vitality is members earn points for certain activities, anything between 100 to 300 points, for instance. And on days when it was a qualifying workout or points, we count that as a physical activity day. So what is the difference between physical activity and fitness? There's lots of this terminology that goes around, and it can get confusing because you hear exercise, you hear fitness, you hear cardiorespiratory fitness, then there's physical activity. So what does it all mean, and is there actually a difference between them? So I'm just going to start with explaining a bit of the terminology. Physical activity refers to any movement that uses energy. So things like walking, cleaning, gardening, playing sports. In my mind, I see it as movement. So if you want to say you want to cut down sedentary time, then you become more physically active. And I also like to see it like that's my step counter. How many steps did I do today? Was I physically active? When we talk about physical fitness, that is an indication of how well your body can handle physical tasks. And when you look at the health-related components of fitness, that gets divided into these different categories. It includes cardiorespiratory fitness, and it can also be divided within aerobic fitness and anaerobic fitness. You get muscle strength and endurance. And if you break that down further, you get things like hypertrophy training, power, strength, and endurance. Then there's body composition. So you're looking at fat mass, muscle mass, lean muscle tissue, and then there's flexibility. And Vitality have decided to incentivize their members for knowing, firstly, and improving their cardiorespiratory fitness because of the strong correlation that we found between cardio fitness and mortality and chronic disease risk. So what exactly is cardiorespiratory fitness? As I said, if you remember from your textbooks, it's something that you test elite athletes on. And I think some of you might be familiar with the testing methods, which is not the most comfortable and enjoyable experience. But cardiorespiratory fitness refers to the ability of your circulatory and your respiratory systems to supply oxygen to the muscles during sustained and usually more intense exercise. And it's a key indicator of your overall health and your endurance. Now, cardiorespiratory fitness, and I'm going to call it short CRF, is measured in a unit that's called VO2 max. So often you get that value. Your VO2 max is 50 or 30, and then it gets measured in something called milliliters per kilogram per minute. So that refers to the volume, how many milliliters of oxygen per kilogram body weight that your body can deliver to the muscles to generate enough energy for you to exercise at maximum exertion. Now, the gold standard that is often used to measure VO2 max is a cardiopulmonary exercise test, a CPEX test, and it's typically performed in laboratories, and you need specialized equipment, trained professionals, and it's complex, it's expensive, it's super horrible. I mean, I don't know how many of you have done like a full VO2 max test, and it's just often it's inaccessible to many people. But thankfully, with recent technological advancements, have made it easier for us to get more reliable estimates of VO2 max by using fitness devices, or our members can go for a Vitality fitness assessment. So how it works in the Vitality ecosystem is as we receive, similar way that we receive your heart rate workouts or exercise data from your fitness device, for Garmin, Samsung, and Apple devices, we receive VO2 max workouts. We take the average of the 5 workouts, and then members get scored and categorized. The fitness level gets categorized based on that values. Now, you can also, for members who don't have a fitness device, can also go and see a biokineticist on the Vitality network, and they can then do a Vitality fitness assessment. And in that assessment, they will either do a treadmill test, which is the Rockport walk test, or they can do a cycle test, which is a Whitepaper sub-maximal ramp test. And these are sub-maximal effort exercise tests that will give us a VO2 max estimate. Now, you might be thinking, often you're in a situation or environment where there is no equipment and things like that. And then there is non-exercise VO2 max formulas that can be useful to you if you want to get a VO2 max estimate. So these formulas often ask for information like how many days a week do you exercise? What is the intensity of those exercises? It varies depending on which algorithm you use or formula you use, but they can ask things like resting heart rate, body weight, waist circumference, and things like that. But in essence, it can give you a good indication of the person's cardiorespiratory fitness level. Now, there is a vast amount of scientific evidence, especially over the last couple of years, that demonstrates a strong correlation between cardio fitness and our overall health. In the long term, cardio fitness not only influences how long we'll live, which we refer to as our lifespan, but it also indicates on how many of those years will be in good health, and that's our health span. Because, let's all agree, you don't want to just get older, you want to get old well, right? And there's a dose-response relationship between improvements in your cardio fitness and the associated improvements in the health and mortality risk. So we've seen with these, the greatest improvement is when a person moves from low cardio fitness or very low levels just up to the next level. So obviously, as you improve your fitness and you even get to the higher levels, you'll continue to get additional health benefits. But the biggest drop in risk is literally moving people from the lowest levels to just a little bit higher. Now, for instance, to explain this, as I mentioned, VO2 max is measured in milliliters per kilogram per minute. We call that MET value. So one MET value is equal to 3.5 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And with every one MET improvement, an improvement in VO2 max is associated with an 18% risk reduction in heart failure risk, 21 to 30% risk reduction of early cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. They've seen an 8 to 14% chance of survival post-myocardial infarction in men and a 13% risk reduction in the development of diabetes when you adjust for BMI. So what this shows us that the small positive changes in your fitness can have a really big impact on your overall health. And you don't need to train like a professional athlete to enjoy these health benefits. Thank goodness for that. So, as your cardio fitness improves, your risk of chronic illnesses like hypertension, high cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, even Alzheimer's and dementia, and your risk of developing mental health disorders like anxiety and depression drops dramatically. Now, our analysis of Discovery Health medical scheme claims data from Vitality members revealed a striking association. Higher cardio fitness levels correlated with reduced claims experience. We saw that members with excellent or superior cardio fitness levels showed a significantly lower risk-adjusted in-hospital claims experience, averaging risk reduction of claims reduction of about 30% compared to individuals with low fitness levels. Now, these benefits of improving cardio fitness levels also extended to mental health outcomes, where we saw a 50% reduction in risk-adjusted in-hospital claims for depression for members that's got superior excellent cardio fitness levels compared to those with low fitness levels. Those are big numbers and a great motivator to improve fitness, right? Now, when you look at Vitality Health Check and screening data that we get, among Vitality members who have completed a Vitality Health Check, those with a good, so you don't need to be a professional athlete, you have a good cardio fitness level, and in our world, good is like this, the 60th to 79th percentile, right? They have a 63 lower prevalence of high-risk glucose readings. And those with the superior cardio fitness level have an 84% lower prevalence of high-risk glucose readings compared to people with low cardio levels, low cardio fitness. And when you look at blood pressure, we saw that members with good cardio fitness level have a 44% lower prevalence of high-risk blood pressure readings, and those with superior and excellent have a 70% lower prevalence of high-risk blood pressure compared to low levels. So those are some big significant numbers. And that is why Vitality supports and incentivizes members to know and to improve their cardio fitness. And that aligns well with Vitality and Discovery's overall core purpose of making people healthier and to enhance and to protect their lives. Now, we have seen that, all these great improvements with regards to the health metrics and risk metrics, but what do we actually know about Vitality Fitness members' exercise habits and lifestyle behaviors? Now, this was quite interesting, and this was a fun project that we had and added onto the white paper. We saw that, obviously, the fittest members logged more points earning workouts on more days each month compared to our least fit members. So when we looked at our 2023, the full year data, our fittest members exercised on average 5 more days per month, and their workouts were done at higher intensities, and they also had longer duration workouts compared to members with low fitness. So this speaks to the importance of, you often find that people will say that they're exercising, and they might be exercising 5 days a week, but the quality of the training is not enough to see improvements in fitness. And we'll speak to that a little bit later when I talk about how do you actually improve your fitness. Now, we also picked up and saw that they have better screening habits. With Vitality Health Check completion, we saw an increase with each cardio fitness level, and that members with superior cardio fitness levels had a 21% higher Vitality Health Check completion rate compared to people with low fitness levels. And when you're looking at these sleep trends, I was quite surprised by this one. I thought, these very fit, active people, is not really getting that much sleep, and because they wake up so early and they do go to bed early, but some of them don't. But we picked up the following trends. We saw that comparing to the average bedtime and wake up time for members that's logging sleep data, it showed that members with higher cardio fitness levels have earlier bedtimes, which I think we all know that you need to go to bed earlier if you want to wake up earlier. They have early wake up times, but their sleep durations were actually longer as well. Okay, wasn't by a lot, but they were definitely longer. Now, this is the fun part. How do we improve cardio fitness, our cardiorespiratory fitness? So there's different types of exercises that you can do to improve your VO2 max, but it also depends on where are you currently at on your fitness level. Because if you are in a good cardio fitness level, the recommendation to improve fitness will look a little bit different to what I would recommend somebody do who's got poor or very poor or very low VO2 max levels. Now, first I'm going to explain the 3 main types of exercise types that's been proven to be efficient and very effective to improve VO2 max. And then I'm going to give some recommendations or what type of exercises or what program you can kind of advise someone to do depending on where they're at. So first is endurance training. Okay. Endurance training is probably the safer one for people to start with. It goes by many names, and you might recognize some of these names. It's also known as continuous cardio training, and it involves exercising at a comfortable, like a moderate intensity. And if I say moderate intensity, that's usually exercise. If you have to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is like you dying, anything between 6 and 7, I would say 7 out of 10. It's also at that point where you can exercise and still have a bit of a conversation with someone, but you prefer not to have a long, big, fat chat. You're getting out of breath. Okay, so that's moderate intensity. And you'll do that for an extended period. So the names it goes by is things like base training, long, slow distance training, high volume, low intensity training, steady state, and the very popular name these days is zone 2 training. So I think some of you might have heard about that. Again, exercise options that falls within endurance training could include things like a fast, like a brisk walk, easy run, can be done indoors, like on a treadmill, or outdoors, or you can use cardio machines in the gym. And you should usually try and aim for a heart rate of about 60 to 85% of your maximum heart rate when you do these longer duration type of workouts. When you somebody that's new, just starting out, you can recommend that they just start with like 20 minutes of it, continuous exercise. And then as you improve, you want to at least add like 1 or 2 of these endurance type of training in your week, building it up to about 45, 60 minutes. And if it's just once a week, you can even go to an hour and a half. And this can also be like a hike, hike, finds a nice challenging hike where your heart rate's going to go up and you're active for that longer duration. Okay, so then you're going to move on to the next one. That is interval training. And this often gets confused with the next one, which is high intensity interval training. So interval training also goes by the name of sprint interval training often. And what it involves is it's alternating shorter, intense burst of exercise with a slower recovery period throughout your session. So you have these work sets and rest sets within your workout. And it's applicable to various exercise forms. You can do this on cardio equipment. You can do it in a run, in a brisk walk. You can do it in a resistance type of format or body weight exercises. So there's different formats. What's important is that you try and elevate your heart rate for the work sets and then fully recover after that. Now, an example of this could be, firstly, you want to always start when you do these type of higher intensity type of workouts or sprint type workouts, you need to make sure that you warmed up. So at least 10 minutes warmed up, and you'll follow that by, it depends how fit you are. You can start with 2 sets or 3 sets, but usually the 4x4 method's very common. So meaning that you will do 4 rounds of 4 minutes at about 80% plus of your heart rate max. And then you'll follow that by 3 to 4 minutes recovery. So it's an easy one to remember, the 4-4-4 method. And you can play around with that depending on where you're at. And if you're getting fitter, you can add another round, or you can increase the duration of the work set. You can shorten the duration of the recovery. It's up to you. Okay, so if you, for instance, want to use this in a cardio setting, it could be doing a rowing movement where you get your heart rate elevated. It could be walking up an incline, find a nice hill and do a brisk walk. Or when you're cycling, you're putting the resistance up. Or then the resistance workout could be that you set up a little station, maybe get 4 exercises like a kettlebell swing, or if you don't have equipment, you can do squat jumps, burpees, jumping jacks, any type of exercise that's going to elevate your heart rate. And then you do 1 minute of each one of those exercises, and then you take a 3 to 4 minute break. So it's really important that you really focus on the recovery within these interval sets. I know there's a lot of exercise classes that just throws everything in and it just feels like one long HIIT class. But really the efficiency of these sprints and these interval workouts is to make sure that you recover fully so that you can go hard again on the next round. So now high intensity interval training, that involves even shorter bursts of intense exercise. So now you're going to really push that heart rate up to about 90% of your heart rate max, and then followed by recovery period. So where we sit with intervals, we've got about 3 to 4 minutes of a work set. Here you're going to work with a work set of about 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, and you're going to give it your all. And then you can play around with your work to rest ratio. So you can work hard for, let's say, 1 minute. And if you've got a 1-on-1 ratio, you're going to rest for 1 minute. But make sure that your heart rate at least recovers down to below 70% of your max heart rate before you go again. Or if you're still new in the fitness thing and you take a bit longer to recover, you can work on like a 1-to-3 ratio, for instance. That will mean that your work set is 1 minute and your recovery is going to be 3 minutes. So what you'll see is on this fitness journey that as you get fitter, your recovery is going to get faster. And that's also a really nice indication that your fitness is improving. And apart from the fact that you'll see that your resting heart rate is dropping down, that's also an indication. But yeah, you'll see that heart rate's coming down quicker, you get to your recovery faster, and then you can actually look at shortening those recovery sets. Okay, so playing around with the duration and the ratios depends on the intensity that you're exercising at, and that allows your heart rate to fully recover. So the more intense the interval, then you can maybe focus on having a bit longer recovery time. So if I have someone who sits in like the bottom level of VO2 max, like cardiorespiratory fitness, and I know that they live quite a sedentary time, I might just start by recommending that they add more movement into their day. So that could be a step count type of focus, trying to get movement in. And then I might recommend just even try and work in 1 or 2 workouts during the day where they can get their heart rate pumping and getting out of breath. And then once they're into a habit of doing that, then I'll either look at increasing the length of those sessions, so going from 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes, or if their work-life balance schedule allow it, see if we can add in another day. And then once they get used to that and we started to establish a little bit more of a exercise base, then I will introduce some interval training because it makes it more fun, it's less boring, and you can really play around with the combinations. They can even involve the kids at home by building that little circuit, and it's quick and it's done and it's effective. So that's how I'll progress. And then lastly, I will add high intensity interval training. So if I have an individual who's got good cardio fitness and they want to move to excellent, or you've got excellent superior, well, I'll speak to that now. Let's say good to excellent. Now you really need to start focusing on the quality of the training that they do. And ideally, you want to tick these 3 boxes plus strength training, which is also part of the guidelines, but we're not focusing on that today, in your weekly schedule. So at least try and do 1 endurance training at a lower heart rate, which is the continuous exercise. And then you can add like the 4x4 sprint intervals, and then short bouts of high intensity. And you don't need many minutes of high intensity. It could literally look like 15 to 20 minutes of your week of doing head workouts. It's quick, it's effective. What I find works really well is if I do my longer duration, I like to do that on a bicycle, where I do my zone 2, listen to a Netflix movie or something like that. And then right at the end of it, I add some sprints. So then I know I get my high intensity in. So that seems to work really well as well. So if you're looking at the literature with regards to the effect of these different exercise forms and improvement in VO2 max, all of them are effective in improving VO2 max, but it seems that high intensity interval training is more effective type of exercise to improve your VO2 max faster. Okay. Cool. So now, what is the role of clinicians and what role can they play with regards to assessing cardiorespiratory fitness? So we see them play a vital role in guiding patients towards a healthier lifestyle by firstly assessing cardiorespiratory fitness. And again, you don't need fancy equipment. It could be a basic questionnaire that you add in your risk screening protocol. And by incorporating it as a risk metric into your clinical practice, we also then want to recommend that clinicians can then gain insights into a patient's cardiovascular and also their overall health. Clinicians also play a critical role in prescribing exercise to their patients, which will empower patients to improve their health. It will help to manage their chronic conditions and enhance their overall well-being. So it can be something simple, like you don't need to be an exercise specialist to prescribe a very in-detail exercise plan. Your local park ran. It's also great for that social connectedness and mental well-being, but, recommend a park run. It's free. There's very few barriers. Recommend that they do some brisk walks, but try and encourage them to do activities that's going to get their heart pumping and going to get them out of breath. And therefore, it's important for clinicians to include cardio fitness as a risk metric to identify risk alongside the other known risk factors like smoking, hypertension, your weight status, and so on. So I'm going to end with this video that's on cardiorespiratory fitness. It will summarize what I've discussed with you. And if you want to read up more about cardiorespiratory fitness, especially how we've incorporated it into the Vitality ecosystem, you can visit and just put into Google search Vitality Cardio Fitness. And we've created a web page that will explain what it is. It will explain how you can test for it and get your numbers. It also explains how Vitality rewards their members for it. And then lastly, what you can do to improve your cardiorespiratory fitness. I will also, I don't know if they've shared it with you, but I will also add the link to the full white paper that's in a PDF format that you can read through. And there's a lot more detail in it that I haven't gone into today. Okay.
Maury, there's no sound on the video. I don't know if there's any sound that you intended to play.
I have sound. Okay. Okay, so sorry if the sound didn't work. If you go into the web page, you'll see this video right up there. But yeah, I hope you found this valuable, and then let's go through some questions. I'm sure there's lots of questions that we can deep dive into.
Thank you very much, Marie, for that presentation. From my side, I think when you started off and you were just painting the global picture versus the South African picture, I was quite concerned because considering that South Africa is a low to middle income country, if you say we have a ratio of 1:2 of adults not meeting their physical activity, what do you think are the contributing factors to that in our setting?
Yeah, so I think a big part of that is a lot of people think that, you know, they're active, they're walking and they're moving, and it's like, why should they exercise? So just to explain, when they say they're not active enough, it means that they're not meeting the physical activity minimum requirements of 150 minutes of cardiovascular exercise. And I think that's why it's important, and that's why Vitality came to look into, you know, cardiorespiratory fitness. You might be active, but you're not fit. And definitely you will enjoy health benefits from being physically active, walking a lot during the day. We can't, like, that's happening and that's real. But people don't enjoy the additional health benefits they can get from actually being fit. And that requires you to do exercise that's going to get the heart rate pump. And the thing is, when you explain to them why it's needed, the fact that, you know, you need to get that heart to stretch so it fills with all the blood. And I don't need to explain to the doctors how this works, but, you know, when you explain to the patients and to members that it's needed for the heart to stretch and fill with the blood and to pump it out so that you can improve the flexibility of the arteries and, you know, and what the benefits of that is and improving your cardiac output and all of that, then they actually understand, okay, cool, I understand now I need to do that. I am active, I walk a lot during the day, I do my own cleaning in my house, but they're not fit. And I think that's a big thing. There's this misconception between moving and not being fit. And then also, you know, if you think about, you know, the general population traveling to work early in the mornings, and then they get to work, it's a full day, then getting back to work and they might be walking, like where do they find the energy to now still exercise? And I think it's important to show that and guide them with regards to, okay, on those days, try and be active as much as you can, but then maybe on the weekend, try and make some time to build in opportunities to improve fitness. So it's just to open up some conversations around that.
I think it's a very important point that you're bringing up, because I think even as medical doctors, we always say to ourselves and to our patients, please increase your exercise, but we don't make the distinction between the physical activity and the fitness. And I think that, just hearing you and the findings that you got from your study, it's very interesting to me how you make a distinction in these two. So tell me, from your findings, what proportion of people were actually just doing purely physical activity versus the fitness bit? Do you have any of that information?
Yeah, so if you look at our member base, we could only look at members that we have VO2 max data for, obviously. For the purpose of the study, we selected one fitness partner, so just to keep consistency with regards to, because they all use different methods on how they calculate VO2 max and things like that. So we've used a partner that we get most data from. But yes, there's a large proportion in the base that you only get steps, and that's where all this work come from, and a dissemination of this information to try and do more. We encourage them to start to do heart rate workouts, so that you can start tracking that. And then is to make them aware of like, what is your VO2 max? So again, this term was just something people didn't pay any attention to, because it, in our minds, something athletes need to worry about. I don't need to worry about VO2 max, why should I worry about it? And we're trying to change that, so make people aware, so that it becomes the buzzword of like, almost like the BRI conversation of, what is your VO2 max, And I think that will get things going and make people interested and create that awareness, so that it moves from steps only to, okay, I need to now look what my heart rate does when I exercise. There's more to exercise than just going for a walk, for instance, or getting my steps in a day. But yeah, there's a large proportion of people everywhere that do that. But it's just starting this process of education.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. There's a question in the chat that is asking, what about exercise for patients with a pacemaker? If you're talking now cardiorespiratory fitness, what does that mean? What does that look like for those type of patients?
Yeah. So definitely, I think in one of the ACSM conferences, they presented, people who had a heart transplant, and they sit with very low VO2 max levels. You're looking at like 15, 17. And they talk about the 5 MET level, the risk level. And what the one study showed was that if you can get their VO2 max up to just over that 5 MET level, which is around 17.5, I think, milliliters per kilogram per minute, VO2 max, it almost shows like a 90% and higher survival rate post myocardial heart transplant compared to when it's under the 5 MET level. So again, if your patient has a cardiovascular condition, they've got a pacemaker, it's just to help them do exercise that just gets them a little bit out of breath. For that patient, definitely not going to recommend them do a high intensity workout. Definitely not. And what we've seen is like those small improvements, like as I presented, a 3.5 VO2 max improvement has such a 21 to 30% risk reduction. It doesn't require them to exercise hours on ends and do high intensity workouts to get that protection. So for them, it would just be recommending, can you walk 3 times a week so that you just feel your heart, pump a little bit faster. Doesn't even need to get close to like the high intensity zones at all. So I hope that answers your question.
That helps a lot. I think I hear you repeatedly saying, get the heart pumping a bit more, you know, because the steps, you kind of just moving and you keeping it, you know, you're not really just putting a stress or making your heart rate beat any faster than you would normal activity. No, thanks for that.
Yeah, and I think for those patients, what I would do is to use the conversation pace. Like, so you can exercise, see if you can still hold a conversation with someone so that you make sure that they're not pushing it too hard. But then also when they do talk to someone, they need to feel out of breath. So I think that's a good guideline to give them at what intensity the exercise needs to be at.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what is 90% above max heart rate, and how do you calculate this, and what is the maximum heart rate?
Good. Okay. So max heart rate, if you do it the right way, you do a exercise test. So you can do, for instance, a RAM test on a bicycle, or you can sprint on a treadmill. And it means you push so hard and you run so hard or cycle so hard until you max out. And then you know what your max heart rate is. So if you do, for instance, the CPAX test, that's what they do. Like a Bruce or Bulker test, they take you to the maximum, and then that's how you determine max heart rate. But that's not something that you can apply to everyone. So there's formulas. The most commonly used one, and the one that we use in Vitality, is a 220 minus your age. If you do that, it will give you your max heart rate. Okay. And then if you want to work out what 90% is, you'll just times that by 0.9 to know what exercise intensity. So if it's 60% of max heart rate, you'll take 220 minus the age times 0.6, for instance.
Great, thank you for that. What is seen as the definition of premature death, age-wise? Because you spoke about, you know, people who of decreased fitness are likely to have premature death. What age-wise is that? What are you talking about when you say premature death?
So it's not a specific age. It would be if you compare that person with somebody similar, similar circumstances, health conditions, and age, they will die earlier compared to someone who were fitter that would die at a later age. So it's extending your life years in essence, whether it is like picking up a chronic condition sooner, and a fitter person might pick up some things later in their life. But it just basically means that premature death is that when compared to others similar to you on the large like GBD data set type of data sets that they use, you will die earlier. And obviously they haven't accounted for things like trauma and things like that. So it's more chronic disease related type of thing.
Okay.
So yeah, there's not a specific age, we know.
Yes.
I know there's some studies that come through that, and you can search for that. You'll find where they actually try to quantify if there's an improvement, how many life years it is. So that's coming through at the moment to say if you improve year to max, or it's about this level, you've added on another 5 years. So for instance, so that research is starting to surface. So yeah, that puts a number to it.
Okay. So we'll have many more studies coming from your unit after all.
Yeah, so this is the start. This is to get the message out. So yeah, we're definitely interested to explore this field further.
Great. Would you please explain how the measure VO2 max and what values in EMTs represent which levels of fitness?
So let me just, am I understanding correctly, VO2 max, how when you do the test, how it's determined? Is that what you're asking? And then how do we categorize it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So usually how it's done, let me explain like what we do in Vitality, for instance. If you do a submaximal test, or whether even if you do a maximal test like your Bruce or Bulker, there's a workload. Whether it's wattage that's applied on the cycle test, and that wattage increases every minute. And then where there's workload, there's a response. Okay. And VO2 max in essence is an indication of how does that body respond to the load. So if you do a cycle test and it's a RAM test, somebody who can put out a higher wattage with a lower response in their heart rate will have a better VO2 max score, indicating that they're fitter. So for instance, if we stop the test when they reach either 7 out of 10 effort level or 85% of heart rate max, and we use the RPE scale because, some people are on beta blockers or medication and affects their heart rate. So you use the effort level to determine when to stop the test. And then you're looking at the amount of wattage that they generated at that level. And a fit person would put out more watts compared to an unfit person, or a person with a low VO2 max will produce lower wattage. If it is, for instance, like a walk test, or it could be a Cooper, a run test that you do, there the workload would be the speed that you run at and how does the heart rate respond. And this is often also used in the fitness devices. When you have a fitness device, there are certain requirements to record a VO2 max. One of the main things is that it needs to have GPS signal. So you need to do an outdoor workout because it tracks your speed, your walking or your running speed, and then it records your heart rate. So the devices is usually quite clever. It will start to pick up your own trends and algorithms and things like that when you exercise. But if you are fitter, you'll be able to run faster at a lower heart rate. I can see, for instance, it was interesting with the Vitality Run series. We traveled down to Cape Town, and I love my VO2 max when I'm at the coast because just running at that altitude, my heart rate just drops. So usually I have a naturally bit of a higher heart rate when I run, but my heart rate just drops. And also I feel stronger and fitter when I'm down there, so my speed is faster. So my VO2 max score really jumps up nicely when I'm at the coast. So you can see how things like that impact the score. And that's kind of the logic that's applied to determining a VO2 max score. Then on how you categorize it, you say whether it's very poor, poor, or low, good, fair, excellent, superior, there are normative tables. So we use a normative table. It's age and also sex specific. So you don't compare men to women. And it's also kind of in decades that it's categorized. So you'll compare, for me, I'll fall into the, give my age away here, 40 to 49 age category, and I'll look under females, and then that value will either then place me into low, fair, good, excellent, or superior. So it also depends on which categorization table you look at, the normative table. There could be some variance, but that's how you can use that, yeah.
You touched on this about the beta blocker when you were explaining. Maybe you just want to elaborate a bit more about how exactly a beta blocker then affects the VO2 max.
Yeah, so that is an interesting concept, and we've actually consulted with Professor Kokinas, who he was a contributor in the American Heart Association paper, the position statement paper that came out on cardiorespiratory fitness. And what they say is that even though like increasing the heart rate, the medication is a limiting factor in that aspect, right? You struggle to get your heart rate up. But just for them being physically active, they'll still enjoy the health benefits. And that's why we often, like in practice, will use the RPE scale because the heart rate won't be as accurate. So they can be pushing hard, and from an effort level, we'll use that as determining the effort and not using the heart rate. So yeah, so it does affect sometimes if you're looking at the algorithms, specifically algorithms that's heavily reliant on heart rate, then it might be worth looking at a different type of test that's not as reliant on heart rate. That's why in the Vitality Fitness assessments, we recommend that members who are on beta blockers do the cycle test because we don't need to look at the heart rate. We look at the effort level and we're looking at the wattage that's produced.
Okay. Very interesting insights, Mari. You said something during your presentation that intrigued me. You spoke about how cardiorespiratory fitness in your study showed that there was a decrease, about 30% decrease in hospital costs. Would you like to elaborate a bit more what you're referring to when you're talking about the hospital costs, the 30% reduction in hospital costs?
Yeah, so we just look at claim incidents, so risk-adjusted hospital claims that came through. So you look at the number of claims that's submitted with regards to hospitalization. And then you saw that people who have high fitness levels, excellent and superior, have that 30% lower claims submissions, hospitalization claims, compared to people with lower fitness.
When you say hospital costs, are you talking only to inpatients, or is that including outpatients as well? So I'm just thinking, you spoke about mental health, and then you spoke about different, medical conditions. I'm wondering, would there be a difference in the inpatient versus outpatients, or do you see the same pattern for both inpatients and outpatients?
Yeah, so you'll see in the white paper, there's a section that speaks to overall hospital claims, and then we've got the mental health specific hospitalization because of depression, falls under ICD-10 code for depression, and then there's a cardiometabolic data as well for people that record versus don't record, but it's purely like inpatients in hospital claims. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a question about the use of a pulse oximeter. What have you ever thought about, and what impact would acquiring a pulse oximeter to measure post-exercise efficacy? Have you guys thought about that? Would it work?
So I think, are you talking about, so pulse oximeter, I think the best way we'll use it to look at recovery heart rate, right? We're not really going to look at spirometry as such, but yeah, so as I say, that alone is not going to give me a value, like a VO2 max value. I think one of the indicators that you're getting fitter is improvement in your resting heart rate. So that's also a good question to ask people, maybe track your resting heart rate. When you wake up in the morning, first thing, what is it and is it improving? That's simple to do. You don't need any equipment. They can just sit at home and measure it and record it down on a piece of paper. So I think from that aspect, yes, that can be useful to see if you've been exercising and they don't have a fitness device, they don't have any means to track heart rate, you can just ask them to track that and see, like, is there a drop in their resting heart rate? So that's where that will be beneficial. We've used that just for a fun day and to create awareness around cardiorespiratory fitness. We've used one of the non-exercise algorithms and just build a fun app around it. And that algorithm actually uses your resting heart rate together with physical activity, days and intensity and other metrics. So then we used a pulse oximeter because, we had a big event and people will put it on just to get a quick resting heart rate. But it was just for fun and to create awareness around that. But that could be something that they can use, but not so much to give you a VO2 max result. No.
Okay, got it. There's a question about strength training. So the question is that we're talking about cardiorespiratory fitness, but what about the important role of strength training, particularly in peri and menopausal women?
Yeah, you speak to the converted. I'm a big advocate of strength training. So this paper and our focus on cardiorespiratory fitness doesn't say strength training is not important. I think if you look at the international guidelines with regards to physical activity, it says 150 minutes and 75 minutes of cardio exercise, which you need to do. Then it also recommends 2 to 3 days of strength training is recommended. And then to reduce sedentary time and to add flexibility. So those are like high level, what the guidelines say. When it comes to strength training, it's really important. How Vitality support members with regards to strength training is through our gym benefits. We create access for people to go to gym facilities. We've got the new Vitality Fitness platform that gives you access to a variety of boutique gym and exercise facilities to work out how you want to, where they can do strength training. So yes, strength training is really important. But like in conversations with members, and we also do wellness days, where we do the Vitality Fitness assessment, you sometimes get people who only do strength training, and because they're exercising, they are a little bit disappointed when they get their VO2 max results because they exercise. So again, it's to explain that what you do is great, but it's not improving your cardiovascular fitness. And I know when you exercise, when you do strength training, especially when you do squats, your heart rate will shoot up and then back down. But it's a different, like with cardio exercises, you've got to cycle blood pumping through the heart and the rest of the body, and it keeps continuing. Where with strength training, it's the pressure that builds up and it's a rush of blood into the rest of the body. So the circulatory system and the requirements is a little bit different with strength training. Yes, there's benefits with regards to mortality risk reduction as well. But for now, the focus for Vitality is just to try and get the message out around CRF. But very important that people do strength training, especially women in menopause or even in the premenopausal years. Like, you absolutely spot on, and it's really important. So I think that's where I'm putting it into your hands, instead of telling your patients you need to exercise, maybe get a little bit more specific with regards to the combinations, like try and do cardio exercises to get out of breath, try and incorporate some strength exercises, which can be done through body weight exercises. They don't need to have any fancy gym memberships or anything, but just add a little bit of more specificity in your recommendation to also guide them. And then they can go and Google and see what type of body weight strength exercise they can do, but there's a little bit more guidance with regards to that.
I'm going to take the last two questions, Marie. The time has gone by so quickly. I want you to tell us which sport or gym exercise training would you recommend to be the hardest on your cardiorespiratory system?
Gorge of fitness. There could be many, right? So I think it's different. So when you do long duration cardio exercises, I find, for me, I've done long duration cycle and running things, and it's hard to keep that heart rate low. So that's strenuous because it keeps going. So any exercise where the volume starts to increase. And then when we're talking volume, it's like increase in duration and increase in the intensity and the frequency. So when you look at competitive athletes and people that will sit in that superior cardio fitness level, they don't just exercise 5 days a week, 30 minutes. They do long, high volumes of exercise. So it's hard to say what sport necessarily. I think each sport, it depends on how much effort you put into it. But yoga is not that. Okay, nothing against yoga.
I get
yoga
it.
is great for your flexibility. Okay.
I get it. And I think then in the last 2 minutes, I think we've discussed, we've heard what the findings were from your study, from the data that you got from your members. You have even given us what the role is as clinicians. I want you now to talk to us as clinicians, because we probably, majority of us fall under the category that is probably doing physical activity, but not achieving the fitness. So what tips would you give to our doctors, in order to push them towards the cardiorespiratory fitness, Marie, considering the type of work that they do, their hours and all of that? Just give us tips. Yeah.
So I'm going to give you tips that I give to women and friends and things like that. It's, you know, you as a parent, you want to teach your kids to look after themselves and eat well and need to exercise. But it's very important to show them that you apply self-care, right? Not do as I say, do as I do, right? And it's important for all of you to apply self-care, and that could be in the form of exercise. And I think it just needs to go and sit in like, what does that look like within your life, your work schedule and everything like that. You know, there's so many different options that you have. You might be tired, it's a long day, and we find we don't have the energy. But actually, starting with the low intensity, I find like when I get to the end of my week and I don't have energy, that zone 2 cycle on my bicycle with my Netflix movie or series that I'm watching is like my favorite workout, because I get out of there and I feel energized. I have done it. I did not give up. I did not quit. So I don't have the guilt of like I should have exercised and I didn't and I'm tired. It's the stress, like the benefits of exercise or managing your stress levels is incredible. Stress is not a button you switch on and off. And all of you are dealing with a lot of stress every day. It's a huge responsibility that you have. And I think don't misunderstand the impact of exercise to help you manage your stress levels. You know, it's short, intense bouts of cortisol release and the stress hormone that you get when you exercise. So it makes your body more efficient to handle stress. When you exercise, you train your body to handle stress so that you react better to it and you don't get so drained and tired. So what I would recommend is start small. Okay, so don't go. The biggest mistake people make is just like, I need to exercise 5 days a week. Start with 2. Identify 2 days in the week that you can add an activity, something that you're going to enjoy and that you're going to look forward to go again. And start at like a lower intensity. You know, biggest mistakes people make, they start to do too much too soon. Then they come back and say, I'm so tired of exercise. I can't, you know, keep my eyes open in the evening and my whole body is sore because they do too much. But if you start slowly and progress slowly, then you're going to start to enjoy it and you're going to want more of it. So I think that's my first biggest recommendation. Then the second is there's something called willpower. Okay. So what it is like these little burst of like activity in the day that you add in that they've seen to help also not improve fitness so much, but to help to start to add more activity in your day. So it's like doing jumping jacks for 1 minute in between your work day to break up sedentary time and things like that. So what that does, it starts to reset your mind around activity and exercise, and it makes it easier then for you later on to engage in exercise further on. But I think the biggest thing is to start slow, like slow and low, 2 days a week, and then you build onto that. And then I think, you know, then the conversations with your patients also gets a lot easier, right? But it's important that you invest in your health as well, you know, before you like tell them what to do. But please don't stop telling them to exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh, this was such an enlightening presentation. We've learned so much about the difference between physical activity and cardiorespiratory fitness. I don't think any one of us can actually forget what a VO2 max is. We will not be able to forget that. And I think that we are going to be looking at physical activity in a different way altogether because of the information that you've shared with us today. And I think we are better empowered to encourage our patients in the different, you know, with their unique illnesses that they present to us, then we are better able to advise them. So thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation. And I know that we are planning a second leg. So this time we're talking about fitness. And a couple of weeks from now, we will be talking about the food basket. So I am really, really looking forward to this. So thank you very much, Marilich. And you and your team are doing a great job. We truly appreciate it. And we hope to host you again in the future for more results. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope everyone's a bit more motivated to start exercising and also to get your patients to exercise. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.